I am Marcus Chen, and this is the story of how I built Chicago's most prestigious restaurant empire from nothing, only to have it stolen by the people I trusted most, and how I rose from those ashes to create something legendary. Growing up in Chinatown, the son of immigrants who worked double shifts just to keep our tiny apartment, I learned early that respect had to be earned. My father Wei ran a small noodle shop that barely broke even, but he poured his soul into every bowl. When he died of a heart attack at 52, I was 21 and determined to honor his memory by building something greater. That's when I met Jonathan Blackwood, a silver-haired venture capitalist with connections throughout Chicago's elite circles. He'd wander into our struggling noodle shop, always impeccably dressed, always curious about my fusion recipes that blended traditional Chinese techniques with modern American flavors. "You have something special, Marcus," he'd say, sampling my Dan Dan burgers or my five-spice short ribs. "Let me help you share it with the world." Jonathan became my mentor, my father figure, my partner. He invested his money, I invested my soul. Together we opened Ember and Jade in River North, a sleek 40-seat restaurant that quickly became the talk of the city. Food critics raved about my revolutionary fusion cuisine. Within 2 years we had a Michelin star and a waiting list 3 months long. But Jonathan didn't just invest money. He brought his daughter Sophia into the business. Fresh from culinary school, she was everything I wasn't: blonde, connected, effortlessly charming with investors and food writers. While I stayed in the kitchen perfecting recipes, she handled the front of house, the media, the glamour. Slowly, she became the face of Ember and Jade, while I remained the invisible hands creating the magic. Over the next 8 years we expanded aggressively. Ember and Jade became a restaurant group with 12 locations across Chicago, Milwaukee, and Detroit. My recipes, my techniques, my vision, but increasingly Sophia's name in the headlines. Rising star Sophia Blackwood transforms Chicago dining. The Blackwood empire expands. My name appeared in smaller print, if at all. By 31 I was exhausted but proud. The restaurants were pulling in $40 million annually. I'd created jobs for over 300 people, elevated Asian American cuisine, and built something that mattered. When Jonathan suggested we celebrate with a company-wide gala at the Art Institute, I agreed, thinking it would be a night to honor our journey together. Sarah, my girlfriend of 3 years, a pediatric nurse with eyes that could calm any storm, helped me pick out a new suit. "You deserve this recognition, Marcus," she said, adjusting my tie. "You've worked for it every single day." As we walked into the gala, surrounded by Chicago's food elite, investors, and staff from all our locations, I felt something I'd rarely allowed myself to feel: pride. The evening was perfect. Staff shared stories of how working at Ember and Jade had changed their lives. Investors praised our growth. Food critics spoke about our cultural impact. Then Jonathan stood to make a toast, his voice carrying across the elegant ballroom. "Tonight we celebrate not just success but legacy," he began, raising his glass. "Which is why I'm thrilled to announce that Sophia will be taking over as CEO of the Ember and Jade Restaurant Group, effective immediately." The room erupted in applause. Sophia beamed, accepting congratulations. I stood frozen, my smile locked in place, my heart hammering against my ribs. Of the company I'd built. 8 years of 16-hour days, of perfecting every recipe, of pouring my soul into every plate, handed to someone who'd never worked a prep shift. Jonathan continued, "And to show our appreciation for Marcus's contributions, we're pleased to present him with this token of our gratitude." He pulled out a small velvet box, the kind used for cufflinks or tie clips. Inside was a cheap watch, probably worth $50, with "Thanks for the memories" engraved on the back. The room fell silent. I felt every eye on me, waiting for my reaction. Sophia's smile faltered slightly, but she didn't protest. The watch felt heavy in my palm, not because of its weight but because of what it represented. 8 years reduced to a discount store timepiece. "Thank you," I managed, my voice steady despite the earthquake in my chest. "This means everything." I slipped the watch into my pocket, shook hands with the smiling faces around me, and walked calmly to the bar. Inside I was dying, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. That night, while Sarah slept, I sat in my kitchen, our kitchen, staring at the watch. The betrayal replayed in my mind. Jonathan's calculated smile, Sophia's eager acceptance, the room's uncomfortable silence. I'd been so focused on cooking, on creating, that I'd never protected what I was building. My father's voice echoed in my memory. Son, in America they will try to take what you build. Make sure you own what matters. I pulled out my laptop and began reviewing contracts, invoices, anything that might give me leverage. What I found made my blood run cold. While I'd focused on the creative side, Jonathan and Sophia had been quietly restructuring. They'd moved my original recipes into a subsidiary company they controlled. The Ember and Jade name was trademarked under their corporation. I owned nothing except my reputation and the techniques in my head. But then I remembered something. 2 years ago, I'd started a consulting company, Chen Culinary Concepts, to develop recipes for other restaurants. It was small, almost forgotten, but it was mine. And more importantly, I'd been careful to keep my most innovative techniques, the ones that made our restaurants special, as trade secrets. They had my old recipes but not my evolution. At 3 a.m. I made my decision. I opened a new document and began typing my resignation letter. But this wouldn't be just a resignation. It would be a manifesto. The next morning I walked into the Ember and Jade corporate office downtown. The breakfast rush was starting at our restaurants, and I could picture the controlled chaos I'd helped orchestrate for 8 years. Sophia was in the conference room already playing CO, surrounded by department heads I'd hired and trained. I knocked once and entered. Good morning, everyone. I have an announcement. I placed my laptop on the table and connected it to the wall screen. My resignation letter appeared, but it was just the beginning. Effective immediately, I'm resigning from all positions at Ember and Jade Restaurant Group. The room stirred uncomfortably. I'm also invoking the non-compete clause in my contract, which means I'll be prohibited from working in Chicago's restaurant industry for 2 years. Sophia looked relieved, but I wasn't finished. However, I want to be transparent about what this means for the restaurants. I clicked to the next slide. The signature dishes that drive 70% of our revenue, the Dan Dan burger, the 5-spice duck, the miso caramel dessert. Those recipes will be leaving with me. Not because I'm taking them, but because they were never officially yours. The room went silent. I clicked again. You see, I developed these recipes through Chen Culinary Concepts before bringing them to Ember and Jade. I licensed them to the company, but I retained ownership. That license expires with my resignation. Sophia's face went pale. Marcus, you can't do this. We have contracts with suppliers, commitments to investors. You have the original recipes I developed in year 1, I replied calmly. The ones that got us started. But the innovations that made us special? Those come with me. I packed my knives, my recipe journals, and the cheap watch. My reminder of what I'd learned about trust. As I walked out, I heard Sophia frantically calling their lawyers, Jonathan shouting about contracts and lawsuits. But I'd been careful. Everything I was taking was legally mine. Within a week, the impact was clear. Without the signature dishes, Ember and Jade's customer satisfaction plummeted. Food critics noticed immediately. Has Ember and Jade lost its magic? Read the Tribune headline. Reservation cancellations flooded in. 3 of their newer locations couldn't adapt and closed within the month. Meanwhile, I was building something new. Something mine. I'd leased a small space in Pilsen, a neighborhood that reminded me of my father's Chinatown but with a vibrant Latin influence. The restaurant would be called Phoenix, and it would serve the cuisine I'd always wanted to create. Not fusion for fusion's sake, but food that told the story of immigrant families like mine, of adapting and thriving and creating something beautiful from struggle. But I couldn't do it alone. I reached out to Elena Reyes, a brilliant chef I'd worked with at our second location. She'd been passed over for promotion at Ember and Jade despite being more talented than half the management team. I'm building something different, I told her. Something where talent matters more than connections. She joined me immediately. So did David Kim, our best sous chef from the flagship location. Then came Maria Santos, our pastry chef who'd been undervalued despite creating desserts that food bloggers obsessed over. One by one, the people who'd actually made Ember and Jade special followed me to Phoenix. The space was small, just 28 seats, but it had character. Exposed brick, mismatched vintage chairs, an open kitchen where diners could watch us work. No pretense, no corporate polish. Just passionate people creating exceptional food. Our opening night was intimate. Sarah invited her nurse friends. I invited my father's old customers from the noodle shop. Elena's family came from Milwaukee. We served food that told our stories. My Dan Dan burger evolved into a Korean Chinese slider that honored both sides of my heritage, Elena's mole-braised short ribs that spoke to her grandmother's recipes, David's kimchi fried rice that turned comfort food into art. The review in the Tribune changed everything. Phoenix rises. Marcus Chen's triumphant return to Chicago's culinary scene. The critic wrote about the soulful cuisine that speaks to the immigrant experience while pushing boundaries. We were booked solid for 3 months within 24 hours. But success brought its own challenges. Jonathan tried to sue me for violating my non-compete clause, claiming Phoenix was too similar to Ember and Jade. The lawsuit went nowhere. Phoenix was clearly different in concept, location and execution, but it cost me money I didn't have and stress I couldn't afford. Then came the real test. A week after the Tribune review, Sophia showed up at Phoenix during our dinner service. She sat at the bar, ordered the tasting menu and watched me work. When I finally had a moment to speak with her, she was finishing Elena's chocolate mole tart. "It's good," she admitted, not looking at me. "Better than good. It's what Ember and Jade should have been." I waited. She continued, "The restaurants are struggling. We lost our Michelin star. 2 more locations are closing. Dad's talking about selling the whole group." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said and meant it. Despite everything, I'd put 8 years of my life into building those restaurants. "I want to offer you a partnership," she said quietly. "Come back. Help us rebuild. You can have creative control, equity, whatever you want." I looked around Phoenix, at Elena plating her signature dessert, at David teaching a new line cook his knife techniques, at the intimate dining room filled with people genuinely enjoying our food. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was a family. "I already have what I want," I told her. "I hope you find what you're looking for." She left without another word. I never saw her again. 6 months later, Phoenix earned its own Michelin star. The ceremony was held at the Palmer House, the same hotel where Jonathan had first pitched his investment in me 10 years earlier. As I stood on stage holding the award, I thought of my father, of the noodle shop, of the long journey that had led me here. The reporter interviewing me asked about Ember and Jade, about the dramatic split that had made food industry headlines. I looked out at the audience, at Elena and David and Maria sitting at our table, at Sarah beaming with pride, at the empty seats where the Blackwoods would have sat. "Sometimes," I said, "you have to lose everything to find what you're really capable of building." Phoenix became more than a restaurant. It became a symbol. Young chefs, especially those from immigrant families, would visit and tell me how my story inspired them to pursue their dreams. Food writers wrote about the Phoenix model, small, chef-owned restaurants that prioritized authenticity over expansion, community over profit. We opened a second location in Milwaukee, then a third in Detroit. But we grew slowly, carefully, never forgetting the lessons I'd learned about trust and ownership. Each location was a partnership with a local chef, someone who understood their community the way I understood Chicago's Pilsen neighborhood. By year 3, Phoenix Group was generating $20 million annually across 5 locations. More importantly, we'd created a model that other chef entrepreneurs could follow. Our cookbook, From Ashes, Building a Restaurant Empire on Your Own Terms, became a bestseller. I started a culinary incubator funding young chefs who reminded me of myself, talented, hungry, overlooked by the establishment. One evening, almost 4 years after that disastrous gala, I was closing Phoenix when I noticed a familiar figure sitting at the bar. Jonathan Blackwood, looking older, his silver hair now white, his expensive suit somehow less imposing than I remembered. "Marcus," he said as I approached. "Congratulations. I've been following your success." I poured myself a glass of wine and sat across from him. "Thank you. How are you?" "Honestly, not great. We sold Ember and Jade last year. The buyers gutted it, turned it into a generic steakhouse chain. Sophia's moved to New York, working for someone else's restaurant group." He paused, swirling his whiskey. "I wanted to apologize. What we did to you was wrong. You built something beautiful and we took it." I studied his face, looking for deception but found only regret. "Why?" I asked. "Why did you do it?" He sighed deeply. "Because I was scared. You were becoming too successful, too independent. I thought if I didn't control you, I'd lose you entirely. So I tried to sideline you, make you dependent on us. It was stupid and cruel." I agreed. But it also freed me. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of years between us. Finally, Jonathan reached into his jacket and pulled out a small box. I know this doesn't fix anything, but I wanted you to have this. Inside was a vintage Omega watch, clearly expensive, clearly meaningful. It was my father's, he said. He built his first business with nothing but determination and integrity. Qualities I forgot, but qualities you never lost. I looked at the watch, then at the man who'd mentored me, betrayed me, and taught me more about myself than I'd ever wanted to learn. Thank you, I said, closing the box. But I don't need it. I have everything I need right here. Jonathan nodded, understanding. He finished his whiskey, left money on the bar, and walked out into the Chicago night. I never saw him again, but I heard he'd retired, was spending time with his grandchildren, trying to rebuild his relationship with Sophia. As I locked up Phoenix that night, I pulled out the cheap watch from my pocket, the one I'd carried for 4 years as a reminder of betrayal. It had stopped working months ago, but I'd kept it anyway. Tonight I finally understood why. It wasn't about the betrayal anymore. It was about the journey. About learning that my worth wasn't determined by other people's recognition, but by my own commitment to excellence, to authenticity, to building something meaningful. I dropped the watch in the trash bin outside Phoenix and walked home to Sarah, who was waiting with Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. How was your day? She asked, the same question she'd been asking for 7 years. Perfect, I said and meant it. Absolutely perfect. Today, Phoenix Group operates 12 restaurants across the Midwest, each one a partnership with a local chef, each one a testament to what's possible when you build on your own terms. We've created over 400 jobs, launched 30 chef entrepreneurs, and changed how people think about immigrant stories in American cuisine. But more than that, we've built something real. Something that can't be taken away because it's rooted in authenticity, in relationships, in the understanding that true success comes not from being given opportunities, but from creating them. The scar from Jonathan and Sophia's betrayal never fully healed, but it became part of my strength. It taught me to protect what I build, to value loyalty over convenience, to remember that sometimes the people who hurt you most are the ones who teach you the most about yourself. To everyone who's followed this journey, from the ashes of betrayal to the heights of authentic success, thank you. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever felt overlooked or undervalued, remember, sometimes you have to lose everything to discover what you're truly capable of building. Keep cooking your own path, and I'll see you at Phoenix. If you like this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more amazing videos.